What made you realize that transgenderism is a threat to women's rights? Question for Victoria from Colombia.
We just had to look around in the world. The invasion of women's spaces, the incarceration of men in women's jails, and the horrible consequences of this. And seeing the prostitution lobby taking over into the institutions all over the place, including Colombia, including my country, everywhere. And we also see the growing leadership of trans-identified males that's very suspicious to us. So we started to see radical feminism growing in Latin America, and the breach that this provoked in the abolitionist movements also, especially the attacks on Alika Kinan, kind of 2 years ago in an event of the March 8 commemorations, when she was attacked for speaking about the women's specific issues. And this, in one of those events, this even escalated into physical attacks into radical feminists. And this became very concerning, but it also encouraged us to get out of the closet and talk out louder and gather more. We are also seeing how trans activism has encouraged the legalization of sex work, and how this harms, well, vulnerable women's rights. So this is what made us so sensitive about the issue of trans activism, where, well, we before weren't so like aware of this connection between trans activism and prostitutional system, but it has become more and more evident with the years, especially the last 2 years. And well, the invisibilization in the official languages, in the media of women by using, instead of women, menstruating persons and pregnant people and all of this. I wanted to tell you about who is Alika Kinan, because my partners in the movement told me that maybe you don't know who Alika Kinan is. Alika Kinan is a prostitution survivor who is the first one to to achieve the prosecution and sentence of her traffickers. She was trafficked for 16 years, and she's like a very visible survivor in Argentina and for the abolitionist Latin American movement in general. So when she started to speak about the women's specific issues, she became attacked by this new wave of neoliberal transgenderism. Even though the abolitionist movement in Argentina was initially supported by trans-identified males as well, because this is an exploitation for them too.
The same question, what made you realize transgenderism is a threat to women's rights, for Olga?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a sudden epiphany, it was just a step-by-step process. I was already starting to radicalize myself. I was reading about surrogacy issues and how it's basically a human rights disaster. And I found out about radical feminism, and I realized that I just naturally align with all radical feminist talking points. And then I stumbled across transgender issue, which is very rampant in the West. It's still not that bad in Serbia, but then I started paying attention, and I realized it's slowly but surely spilling over into this country as well. And I just realized that this is a global patriarchal backlash. This looks very much orchestrated. It's surrogacy, prostitution, and transgenderism, and it's absolutely horrific. I really I knew that there is a lot of misogyny in the world, but this is a completely new level. I cannot wrap my head around the fact how much misogyny there is in the world and how much it affects and forms and defines our institutions and our laws, etc. And I remember that I read there is a strong pro-surrogacy lobby in Serbia. And I remember this medical doctor saying that they found a beautiful legal name for surrogate mothers, because surrogate mother sounds too brutal. It doesn't sound nice. So they found out a way to just to go around it, and they will call surrogate mothers in the law birthers or birthing persons. And it sounds exactly like transgenderism. It's that exactly the same philosophy. And yeah, it just was, I think that was probably my first peak trans moment, because I realized it's just all the same. It's just part of this big anti-women war. It's basically a war. So that's how I realized it's dangerous and it should be stopped before it comes into Serbian law. And they're already making attempts to implement self-ID.
It started for me, first of all, oh, wow, it must be quite maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I was working in a sauna and they had a Women's Day on a Monday. And at a certain point, a trans-identified male wanted to come to the Women's Day. He wanted to come and work on the Women's Day. And so she is clearly desperately unhappy in their body, really not an aggressive, nasty male. But when I said, well, I don't have a problem with her working here, but shouldn't we ask the women who have been coming for 20 years how they feel, particularly pre-surgery? And basically, I was kicked out of the sauna for being a transphobe. And then I didn't think a lot about it. I thought, that's just me. Then there was one time I was at the most famous kind of gay club here, which is once a week on a Sunday night. And I was in the bathroom rinsing my menstrual sponge. And a trans-identified man said to me, "That's disgusting." And I said, without even thinking about it, well, if you think it's disgusting, you're probably in the wrong toilet. At which point they went running out and came in with like 5 people to throw me out of the club. And to the extent that women had to come out of the toilet, or other women in the, I was just saying, look, I will leave, but please just let me put my sponge back in. I'm rinsing my sponge, I'm bleeding. And it's like, no, so it was really very, very aggressive. And basically other people in the club had to say, look, just let her put her sponge back in before you throw her out. And then the last time was, so after I had my daughter and was out of the scene for a while, I went to an anarcho-feminist conference in the UK. And again, we got told that we were TERFs, we got thrown out. And it was just really clearly so deeply misogynistic. It's like, my confusion constantly and pain is all the women who were buying into it. That it's other women who attack you for being hateful, for saying, but we have a right, we have a right to space without men. And, and even if I think about, I don't want to name her, but even if I think about this transgender woman who I know, who I actually personally really like, her whole attitude, and I'm calling her just for the ease, attitude of, I have a right to be here and it doesn't matter what other women think, is so clearly indicative of male privilege. And the fact that other women can't see that is killing me.